When I turned 65, I thought I had everything figured out. Christmas was supposed to be a time of joy, warmth, and family. I spent weeks planning, picking the perfect decorations, preparing the house for the big day. But when Christmas finally came, everything went wrong. My family was supposed to be here, gathered around the dinner table, laughing, sharing stories, and enjoying the holiday together. Instead, I sat alone, watching the clock tick past the time we'd agreed on. My phone stayed silent. The door never opened. By 6:30, I knew something was off. I checked my phone again, no messages, no calls. It was as if they had forgotten. The candles I lit were burning low, the table set for a family that never showed. The roast sat untouched in the oven, growing cold. I tried to hold on to hope, telling myself they'd be here soon. But the minutes dragged on, and the silence in the house grew heavier. I had prepared everything, the table, the food, the perfect Christmas playlist. Yet no one came. I checked my phone one more time, hoping for a text. Nothing. Not even a simple "sorry, we'll be late." Then, around 8 o'clock, my daughter-in-law, Emily, showed up. She walked in with that polite smile of hers, the one she always wore when she had something to hide. She handed me a card, a Christmas card, and said, "You should read it." I was confused. I thought maybe it was just a holiday greeting. But when I opened the card and read the words inside, I felt a chill run down my spine. "Roses are red, violets are blue, Christmas is here, but we don't care about you." I blinked. I had to read it again. My hands trembled as I held the card. Was this some kind of joke? Emily stood there, her smile still plastered on her face, her eyes not meeting mine. I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at the card, trying to make sense of what had just happened. A joke? A sick prank? I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing: I had been played. The woman I had welcomed into my family, the one I thought I could trust, was standing in front of me, and I didn't know her at all. The longer I looked at that card, the angrier I became. Not because of the words, but because of the meaning behind them. It wasn't just a prank. It was a deliberate act of disrespect. A reminder that, to them, I was nothing more than an afterthought. A joke to be laughed at, a burden to be pushed aside. As I stood there, holding the card in my hands, the doorbell rang. My son, Jack, walked in with his usual distracted look. He barely acknowledged me, heading straight to the living room where Emily was already sitting. They didn't even care enough to pretend everything was fine. I stood frozen, holding that card, feeling like my heart had shattered into 1,000 pieces. Was this really my family? Was this the Christmas I had spent so much time preparing for? I wasn't sure anymore. But what I did know was this: I wouldn't let them get away with it. I wouldn't let this be the way they treated me. Not now. Not ever. I stood there in stunned silence, the card still in my hands. The words written inside it echoed in my mind, a cruel mockery of the holiday I had spent weeks preparing for. I had expected laughter, joy, the warmth of family around the table, but instead, I was left holding this insult. Emily, standing in front of me with her unshaken smile, didn't seem to grasp the weight of what she had just done. I looked at her, and for a moment, I wondered if she even cared. It wasn't just the words on the card, it was the realization that this was how they saw me. Invisible. Disposable. A joke. I wanted to scream, to ask her why she would do something so hurtful, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I just stood there, the card crumpling slightly in my trembling hands. I tried to steady myself, to find my voice, but before I could, Jack entered the room. He barely glanced at me as he walked past, offering a brief, absent-minded greeting. "Hey, Mom," he said as he went to the couch, plopping down beside Emily. No warmth, no acknowledgement of what was happening, just a simple, empty greeting as if nothing had changed. I looked at them both. How could they be so cold? Emily's eyes shifted away, but her smile remained plastered on her face, as if she were still playing some sick game. She looked at Jack, then back at me, and I knew that she had orchestrated this moment. My heart sank as I realized that not only had they forgotten about me, but they were also treating me as though I didn't matter. Jack sat down beside Emily, the two of them whispering, probably planning the next way they would exclude me. I could feel the walls closing in on me. This wasn't the family I had spent my life building. This wasn't the love I had given so freely. I had spent years taking care of them, supporting them, always making sure their lives were easy, their needs met. And this was the thanks I got. I thought of all the times I had been there for them, the countless holidays, birthdays, and hard times I had been a part of. Yet now, in my moment of need, they weren't here. My mind raced back to the card in my hand, the words that seemed to mock me, roses are red, violets are blue. The rhyme was childish, yes, but the intent was clear. It was meant to put me down, to remind me that I was old, irrelevant, and not worthy of respect. I could feel my hands shaking as I set the card down on the table. I couldn't bring myself to say anything. What could I say? They had already made their feelings clear. They had already decided I was no longer important to them. And the worst part? I had been so blind to it for so long. I had never seen the signs. I had been so caught up in trying to keep the family together, trying to hold on to the love I thought we all shared. But now, standing here, I realized the truth. They didn't care about me. I was just a burden, someone they had to tolerate. I turned away, walking slowly into the kitchen. The familiar smell of the Christmas meal I had prepared was still in the air, but it was no longer comforting. It felt suffocating. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to steady my breath. I wasn't going to let this break me. I wasn't going to cry. I had cried enough in my life. It was time to stand up for myself, to stop pretending like everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. I had given so much of myself, and now it was time to take a step back. I had to start thinking about me. I walked back into the living room, where Emily and Jack were still sitting, lost in their conversation. I'm going to bed, I said, my voice calm but firm. Neither of them even looked up. They didn't care. I wasn't going to beg for their attention, for their love. I had done that enough over the years. Now, it was time to let go. As I walked to my bedroom, the weight of everything finally settled on my shoulders. I sat on my bed, staring at the empty space beside me where my husband should have been. But he was gone, and I was left with this emptiness. I wasn't going to let them take any more from me. I was done. I had raised my son, I had supported this family, and now it was time for me to live for myself. I had to find my own peace, my own happiness. I wasn't going to let them strip me of that, not anymore. I lay down, my mind racing, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of clarity. I wasn't going to be the doormat anymore. I wasn't going to sit by and let them use me. I was going to take control of my life, starting now. I woke up the next morning to the sound of birds chirping outside my window, a stark contrast to the turmoil I felt inside. The silence in the house was unbearable. My heart was heavy as I lay there, staring at the ceiling. It was the day after Christmas, but it felt like nothing had changed. I had spent the night tossing and turning, trying to make sense of everything that had happened, but the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep living in this shadow of a family that didn't care. The phone call I had been expecting never came. Jack didn't call to check on me, and Emily certainly wasn't going to apologize for the card she handed me the night before. No one bothered to ask if I was okay. I had been alone in this house for so long, but now it felt different. It wasn't just the quiet, it was the realization that I was invisible to them. As I slowly got out of bed, I made my way downstairs. The house was just as I left it the night before, empty, lifeless. The Christmas tree stood in the corner, the lights still twinkling faintly, but it felt hollow. There was no warmth, no joy. The house had lost its magic, and so had I. I couldn't stop thinking about the words Emily had written in that card. It wasn't just a poorly timed joke, it was a sign of something deeper, something I had been too blind to see. The woman I had welcomed into my family, the one I thought was kind and loving, had no respect for me at all. It wasn't just the card. It was the way she had manipulated Jack, the way she had slowly turned him against me over the years. I had been too trusting, too willing to believe that everything was fine, that our family was still whole. But the truth was, it had been falling apart for a long time, and I was the last to see it. I walked into the kitchen and made myself a cup of coffee, trying to steady my nerves. The aroma filled the room, but it didn't bring me comfort. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from me. My husband used to sit there, his warm smile always a source of comfort. But now, that chair was empty, just like everything else in my life. I had spent years taking care of this family, doing everything I could to keep them happy, to keep the peace. And for what? So they could forget about me? So they could treat me like a burden? I had been nothing more than a servant to them, always there when they needed something, but never truly appreciated. The thought made my chest tighten. I could feel the anger rising, but there was something else too, sadness. I had given so much of myself, and now, I was left with nothing. I felt like I had been robbed of everything that mattered. My family, my love, my time, it had all been taken for granted. I wanted to believe that things could be different, that maybe if I tried harder, they would see me. But I knew better now. I had spent too many years making excuses for them, covering up their mistakes, forgiving them when they didn't deserve it. But not anymore. I wasn't going to beg for their love or their attention. I wasn't going to sit quietly and let them walk all over me. I was done. I put my coffee mug down and stood up, my decision clear. I wasn't going to let them take any more from me. I wasn't going to let them strip me of my dignity. I walked over to the window and looked out at the snow falling softly outside. It was beautiful, peaceful, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. But as I watched the snowflakes drift down, I realized something important. I still had control over my life. I didn't have to live in this empty house, surrounded by people who didn't care about me. I could leave. I could start over. For the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe it wasn't too late for me. Maybe I could find happiness again, away from this toxic family. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to let them define who I was anymore. I had spent too long putting everyone else first. It was time to put myself first. I wasn't going to wait around for a call that would never come. I wasn't going to let my son and daughter-in-law treat me like a joke. I had worked too hard to let them take away my peace. The decision had been made. I was leaving. And this time, I wasn't coming back. I had spent the last few days in a haze, moving through the motions of daily life without really living. My decision was made. I couldn't keep staying in this house, pretending like everything was fine when clearly, it was not. The card Emily handed me, the dismissive attitude from both her and Jack, it was all a sign, one I could no longer ignore. I had been treated as invisible for too long. They had no idea how much I had given to this family, how much I had sacrificed. My whole life had been spent raising my children, supporting my husband, and now, I was nothing more than a burden to them. But I was done. No more would I be. The forgotten matriarch of this family. I spent that morning packing my things. It was an odd feeling, knowing I was leaving the home I had built with my own hands. The house that once echoed with laughter, the rooms filled with memories of birthdays, holidays, and family gatherings. It no longer felt like a home to me. It felt like a prison. I had made every room in this house my own, filling it with memories of love and care. But now, it was just a shell, and I was ready to walk away from it. As I folded my clothes, I found myself lingering over the little things, the the trinkets my children had given me over the years, the photos on the wall, the little notes I had kept. It was bittersweet. I had spent so many years trying to keep everything together, making sure everyone had what they needed, that I never stopped to take care of myself. It wasn't until now, until I had been discarded by the very people I had given everything to, that I realized how much I had sacrificed. I put the last of my things into the suitcase and sat down on the bed. I looked around the room one last time. The bed was made, the curtains drawn, but it felt empty. My husband was gone, my children were distant, and the house that once felt full of life now felt hollow. But I couldn't stay here anymore. I couldn't keep pretending like they cared. I stood up and walked to the front door, feeling the weight of the decision in my bones. As I reached for the handle, I hesitated. This was it. There was no going back. I wasn't sure where I would go, but I knew I couldn't stay here, in this place that had become a constant reminder of how much they had taken from me. I opened the door and stepped outside. The air was cold, the wind biting at my skin, but I welcomed it. The house behind me seemed so distant, so irrelevant now. I didn't need it anymore. I didn't need any of them. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. I wasn't sure where I would go next, but I knew one thing, I wasn't going to let them take any more from me. I would find my own way, my own path, and I would do it without them. I had spent too long living for others, too long letting my family define who I was. Now, it was time for me to live for myself. As I walked down the street, the wind howling around me, I realized that this was the beginning of something new. I had no idea what the future would hold, but for the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my life. I wasn't a victim anymore. I wasn't the old woman they could push around. I was someone who could make her own decisions, someone who could start over. And that was exactly what I was going to do. I woke up early the next morning, the world outside still dark and quiet. I could hear the faint hum of the heater in the corner, trying to keep the chill at bay. The house felt different now, empty in a way it hadn't before. It was no longer a place where memories were made, but a place where memories were fading. I had left it behind, but somehow, it still lingered in my mind. I sat up in bed, feeling the weight of the decision I had made the day before. It wasn't an easy choice, but it was the right one. I had spent too many years living for others, trying to keep everyone else happy, trying to make sure my family was whole. But in the end, I was the one left behind. I had spent so much of my life taking care of them, doing everything I could to make their lives easier, and what did I get in return? A cold card on Christmas, a family that didn't care, and a house that was no longer a home. But now, as I sat there in the quiet, I realized something. I wasn't going to let that be my story. I wasn't going to let them define who I was anymore. It was time to reclaim my life, to take back control. I stood up and walked to the window, pulling back the curtains. The streets were still covered in snow, the world outside still asleep. But for me, it was a new beginning. The world was waiting, and it was time for me to step into it. I didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do, but I knew that I couldn't stay here any longer. I had lived for everyone else for so long that I had forgotten what it was like to live for myself. And now, I was going to figure that out. I went to the kitchen and made myself a cup of coffee. As I stood there, sipping the hot liquid, I thought about the years I had spent raising my children, the sacrifices I had made. I thought about the love I had given, the hours spent cleaning, cooking, taking care of them when they needed me. And then I thought about the emptiness I had felt in return. The emptiness that grew when they stopped calling, when they stopped visiting, when they stopped caring. It was time to stop waiting for them to change. It was time to stop hoping that things would go back to the way they used to be. I couldn't keep waiting for them to see me. I had to see myself first. I had to find my own path, my own happiness. I finished my coffee and packed my things, leaving the house behind. As I walked down the street, the cold air biting at my skin, I felt a sense of freedom. It was a feeling I hadn't had in years. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my own life. I wasn't going to let them take that away from me anymore. I was going to live on my own terms. I wasn't sure where I would go next, but I didn't need to know. I had spent too many years worrying about the future, about what was going to happen next. Now, I was just going to take it one step at a time. I was going to find my own way, and for the first time in years, I felt a little spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could start over. Maybe I could find a life that was mine, one where I wasn't just a caregiver, a background character in everyone else's story. I was going to write my own story from now on. As I walked away from the house, I felt like I was shedding an old skin, like I was finally breaking free of the chains that had held me down for so long. The world was wide open, and I was ready to see what it had to offer. I walked for what felt like hours, not really sure where I was going but knowing I had to keep moving. The streets were quiet, and the cold air nipped at my skin, but I didn't mind. There was something freeing about it. The weight I had been carrying for so long was slowly starting to lift. I had left the house, left the family who had treated me like I was invisible, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was living someone else's life. I was finally living my own. I didn't know what the future held, but that was okay. I didn't need to know. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had options. I wasn't confined to the life I had known for so many years. I could choose something different now. As I walked, I couldn't help but think about all the years I had spent giving, and getting nothing in return. I had sacrificed my time, my energy, my love, and yet, when I needed them the most, they had turned their backs on me. I had spent my life building up my family, making sure they had everything they needed, all while neglecting myself. I had forgotten what it was like to take care of my own needs, to put myself first. I had been so focused on keeping everyone else happy that I had lost sight of what made me happy. And now, I was starting to remember. I remembered the things I used to love, the things I put aside because there was always something else that needed to be done. I remembered the places I wanted to visit, the dreams I had put on hold. I remembered who I was before I became mom or grandma or the caretaker. I was a person, with desires and needs of my own. And I was finally ready to acknowledge that. As the sun started to set, I found myself in a small park, the trees bare and the benches empty. It was peaceful, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. I sat down on one of the benches and looked around. The world felt so big now, so full of possibilities. I thought about the house I had left behind. I thought about the family I had walked away from. There was a time when I thought I could never leave them, when I thought they were everything. But now, I realized that I had to leave in order to find myself again. I had spent too long being someone else's version of myself, and it was time to reclaim who I truly was. The park was quiet and the sky was beginning to darken, but I didn't feel afraid. I felt empowered. I felt like I had just taken the first step toward something new, something better. It wasn't going to be easy, and there would be challenges ahead, but I was ready. I had spent too many years taking care of others, putting everyone else's needs before my own. It was time to take care of myself for once. It was time to find my own happiness. I knew it wouldn't happen overnight, but I was ready to start. I didn't have all the answers, but I didn't need them. I had spent too many years trying to control everything, trying to hold on to something that was slipping through my fingers. Now, I was ready to let go and see where life would take me. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. I wasn't tied down by anyone's expectations. I wasn't living for anyone else. I was living for me. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the cool air fill my lungs, and when I opened them again, I saw the world in a new light. The future was uncertain, but for the first, where I was no longer defined by my family's expectations or my past. I was just me. I could feel the weight of my past life slowly lifting off my shoulders as I wandered the streets. No more pretending, no more trying to please people who would never see me for who I truly was. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. But even with this newfound sense of freedom, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The world around me was bustling with activity, people rushing by, busy with their own lives, but I was still missing that connection, that sense of belonging. It wasn't the kind of belonging I had with my family, it was something deeper, something I had forgotten existed. I remembered a time when I was happy, when I felt valued and loved, not just for what I could do for others, but for who I was. It was a long time ago, but I could still feel it in my bones. It was the feeling of being seen. I had spent so many years being the one to give, to care, to nurture, that I had forgotten what it felt like to receive. To have someone see me as more than just a mother, a grandmother, a caretaker. I realized I had spent my whole life being someone else's idea of who I should be. I had given so much of myself that I had lost touch with who I was, with the woman I used to be before I became a caregiver. I had let the roles I played in my family consume me, to the point where I no longer recognized myself. And now, here I was, trying to find that woman again. I wasn't sure how I was going to do it, but I knew it was time. It was time to reclaim my life, to find out who I was beyond my family, beyond my past. I wasn't just a mother or a grandmother. I was Alice. And I had to start living for myself. I started small. I spent my days exploring the city, finding new places to eat, visiting parks I had never been to before. I talked to strangers, made small talk with baristas, and allowed myself to enjoy the little moments. I wasn't looking for anything, but somehow, it all felt like part of something bigger, something I had been missing for so long. I took walks in the evenings, letting the cool air refresh me, clearing my mind. I wasn't running from my past anymore. I was walking towards something new, something I couldn't yet see, but I felt it in the pit of my stomach. It was hope. I met a few people along the way, some brief conversations, some short encounters, but each interaction felt like a step toward finding myself again. I began to remember what it was like to just be me, without the weight of expectations. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One evening, as I sat in a small cafe with a cup of coffee, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. The world around me was still chaotic, still loud, but I was okay. I was content. And that was enough for now. I didn't have all the answers, but I didn't need them. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing something or someone. I was just living. And maybe, just maybe, that was all I needed to do to start finding the answers. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had been living my whole life for others. It had been about meeting their needs, fulfilling their expectations, and making sure everyone was happy. But now, for the first time in a long time, it was about me. I was going to stop waiting for someone else to make me feel important. I was going to do it for myself. It wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to happen overnight. But I was going to take control of my life again. I was going to make my own choices, and I was going to find happiness on my terms. I spent the next few weeks settling into this new life, though settling wasn't quite the right word. It wasn't as though I was figuring everything out. No, it was more like I was simply allowing myself to breathe. The days were still uncertain, filled with new choices and moments of self-reflection. But each day, I felt a little more like myself. I had stopped waiting for a call that would never come. The world around me, once filled with the noise of family demands, was quieter now, and that silence was no longer uncomfortable. It felt like peace. I found myself exploring the city in a way I never had before. I had lived here for years, yet I had never truly seen it. The simple act of walking down a street, noticing the small details, was a revelation. There were coffee shops I had never been to, parks I had never visited, and streets I had never walked down. It felt like rediscovering a place I had known for so long. The world wasn't as small as I had once thought. As I wandered, I started to realize that I was becoming someone different. It wasn't just the change of scenery, it was something deeper. I was learning to let go of the past that had tied me to a version of myself I no longer recognized. I wasn't just a mother, just a grandmother, or just a caretaker anymore. I was Alice, and Alice was allowed to have her own life, her own desires, her own dreams. I started writing again. I had forgotten how much I used to love writing. As a child, I had always filled notebooks with stories, thoughts, and dreams. But somewhere along the way, I had stopped. I had put it aside to take care of everything and everyone else. It was time to take that back, to fill the pages with my own voice once more. It wasn't about writing for anyone else, it was about writing for me. My first few pages were filled with messy thoughts and scattered memories. But slowly, it started to take shape. I wrote about my life, my struggles, the things I had learned. It wasn't perfect, but it felt good. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to impress anyone or live up to anyone's expectations. I was just being me. I also began to meet people, just casual conversations with strangers I encountered throughout the day. It was a strange feeling, talking to people without any agenda. No need to give advice, no need to be the strong one. Just simple, human interactions. And for the first time in so long, I realized that I didn't have to be the one who always held everything together. I could be vulnerable, and that was okay. One afternoon, I sat in a small cafe, sipping my coffee, and looking out the window. I thought about the years I had spent waiting. Waiting for my family to come around, waiting for things to go back to how they were. But now, I realized something important. Waiting for someone else to change wasn't going to make me happy. It was never going to bring back the love or the connection I once had with them. It wasn't my responsibility to fix everything. My life didn't have to revolve around them anymore. I was allowed to live for myself. The more I thought about it, the more I understood. I had been holding on to a dream, a version of a family that no longer existed. I had spent so much time trying to make them see me, trying to make them care, but I realized that I couldn't force them to do that. I couldn't force anyone to change. The only person I could change was myself. And that was the most liberating realization I'd had in years. I didn't need them to approve of me, to validate my worth. I was worthy of love and respect on my own. The change wasn't going to come from them, it had to come from me. And that's when I truly started to heal. I started to forgive myself for the years I had wasted, for all the time I had spent believing I wasn't enough. I was enough. I had always been enough. The journey wasn't over, but I was finally on the right path. The freedom I felt now wasn't the freedom I had imagined. It wasn't about escaping my past or running away from my family. It was about accepting who I was and finding peace with that. It was about allowing myself to live the life I had always dreamed of, without the weight of expectations, guilt, or shame holding me down. I was Alice, and for the first time, I was living for me. I woke up with the soft light filtering through the curtains, the quiet of the morning wrapping around me like a warm blanket. The stillness felt different now, like it had more room to breathe, more room to settle into. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't in a rush to get up and start the day. There was no list of things to do, no obligations weighing on me. It felt strange, but it felt good. I got out of bed and stood in front of the mirror, looking at the woman staring back at me. She wasn't the same woman who had been left behind, forgotten by her family, burdened by the weight of expectations. This woman was someone new. This woman had a sense of purpose, a sense of self that I had lost along the way. I hadn't realized how much of myself I had given away until I started to take it back. I had spent so many years living for everyone else, trying to make my family proud, trying to keep the peace, trying to be everything they needed. But now, I realized that I had to be everything I needed first. I wasn't just a mother or a grandmother. I was Alice. And Alice was allowed to live for herself. I dressed slowly, enjoying the feeling of putting on something that made me feel good, something that reminded me of who I was before all of this. I didn't have to hide behind a role anymore. I was allowed to just be me. The day stretched out ahead of me, full of endless possibilities. I didn't know where I was going or what I was doing, but that was the beauty of it. I didn't need to have it all figured out. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to control everything. I wasn't waiting for my family to come around or for something to change. I was simply living, and that was enough. I spent the morning walking through the city, taking in the sights, the sounds, the small moments I had overlooked for so long. I stopped at a cafe and had a cup of coffee, just sitting there, watching the world go by. It was a simple thing, but it felt like a victory. I wasn't rushing through my life anymore. I wasn't chasing after something that was never going to come. I was here, right now, and I was okay with that. Later, I went to the park, sat on a bench, and just let myself be. It wasn't about escaping the past, it was about embracing the present. The freedom I felt wasn't about running away from my family or the life I had known. It was about finding peace within myself, about accepting that I could be okay, even if they never saw me the way I wanted them to. I wasn't living for their approval anymore. I was living for me. And that was more than enough. I knew that there would be challenges ahead. There would be days when I missed the comfort of the familiar, when I felt the weight of being alone. But those days would pass. I had spent too many years living for others, and now I was going to live for myself. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but it was real. I was finally starting to build a life that was mine, one step at a time. I didn't need to be anyone else. I didn't need to be the perfect mother, the perfect grandmother, the perfect caretaker. I just needed to be Alice. And that was enough. In this compelling family story, an elderly woman finds herself neglected by her family after years of dedication and self-sacrifice. As she experiences betrayal and abandonment, she embarks on a journey of self-discovery, walking away from everything she once knew to find her own identity. This emotional tale is a perfect example of family stories that highlight the struggle for self-worth and the courage to live for oneself. Through the eyes of a mother and grandmother, this family story explores the complexity of relationships, revealing how love and devotion can sometimes lead to feeling invisible and unappreciated. As the central character takes control of her life, she learns that true happiness lies in embracing her own freedom, proving that even in the toughest family stories, strength and resilience can lead to transformation. The narrative of this woman's journey unfolds with powerful moments of reflection, each step a testament to the untold strength hidden beneath the surface of family stories that many may relate to. By reclaiming her independence, she shows that even in the most difficult family stories, there is always the possibility of starting anew, proving that it's never too late to rediscover oneself. Character 1 is an elderly woman around 65 years old with white skin. She is dressed in a modest yet elegant outfit. The camera view is frontal with no cartoon, no CGI, no illustration. She has a soft expression that reflects years of experience. Character 2 is a woman in her early 40s with white skin. She is wearing a stylish modern outfit. The camera view is frontal with no cartoon, no CGI, no illustration. Her face shows a confident yet slightly aloof expression. 1. The camera zooms in on an intense confrontation between the two main characters, the elderly woman and her daughter-in-law. The scene is set in a large, dimly lit living room. The air is thick with tension. The elderly woman, Alice, stands tall, her posture strong despite her age. She faces Emily, her daughter-in-law, who stands with a defiant expression, arms crossed. The room is quiet except for the sharp words exchanged between them. The weight of years of unresolved emotions hangs in the air as the two women exchange harsh words, their faces full of anger and frustration. This is the boiling point, the culmination of years of neglect and betrayal. They are not just confronting each other, they are confronting everything that has been left unsaid for so long. 2. The scene opens with Alice in her cozy kitchen, preparing breakfast. The soft morning light filters through the window, casting a peaceful glow over the room. Alice moves with purpose, making coffee and setting the table. There's a sense of routine, a quiet stability in her movements. Her expression is calm, reflective. As she pours coffee into a cup, she looks out the window, lost in thought. The camera lingers on her face, capturing the subtle weariness in her eyes, the result of years of caring for others. Despite the mundane scene, there's a hint of sadness in the way she stirs the coffee, a quiet longing for something more. 3. Emily is shown in a bright, modern apartment, moving quickly through her day. She's dressed in a sharp, professional outfit, typing away on her laptop, a look of determination on her face. The apartment is sleek and stylish, a stark contrast to Alice's home. Emily's movements are quick, purposeful. She picks up her phone, sends a text, and checks her calendar, all signs of a life in constant motion. Her face reveals little emotion as she works, but there's a tension in her jaw, a quiet, underlying dissatisfaction. The camera captures her in these moments of isolation, emphasizing her coldness and the emotional walls she has built up around herself. 4. Alice and Emily stand in a tense standoff, the two women facing off against a new threat. This time, it's not just about their relationship, it's about survival. The scene takes place in the same dimly lit room, but this time, the atmosphere is charged with danger. A new figure enters, an unscrupulous business associate, someone who has been manipulating the family for their own gain. The man stands in the background, watching as Alice and Emily argue. The tension is palpable, and both women are on edge. Their conversation turns from personal to urgent as they face the harsh reality of being caught in someone else's scheme. The camera focuses on their faces, capturing their growing realization that they can no longer trust anyone, not even each other. 5. The scene shifts to a quiet park, the autumn leaves drifting down from the trees. Alice sits on a bench, her hands folded in her lap, staring off into the distance. She's alone now, reflecting on everything that has happened. The world around her is calm, but her mind is anything but. The camera lingers on her face, capturing the mixture of sorrow and hope in her expression. This is a moment of introspection, of coming to terms with the past. There's no dialogue, just the sound of the wind rustling through the trees and the faint hum of the world continuing around her. It's a moment of quiet resolution before she takes the next step in her journey. 6. The final scene takes place in the same house where the conflict began. Alice stands alone in the doorway, looking out at the world beyond. The house is empty now, a symbol of everything she's leaving behind. She steps outside, the weight of her decisions settling over her. There's no turning back. The camera captures her walking down the street, her steps steady and confident. She's free now, ready to reclaim her life. The scene fades to black as she walks into the unknown, her future uncertain but full of possibility. Prompt 1. In a dimly lit living room, two strong women face off in a heated confrontation. Alice, a 65-year-old woman, stands tall despite her years, her white skin illuminated by the soft glow of the room's lights. She has a look of quiet defiance on her face, her hands clenched at her sides. Emily, in her 40s, stands across from her with her arms crossed, a cold and calculated expression on her face. The tension in the room is palpable, as years of unresolved emotions build to a boiling point. Their eyes lock, the silence deafening before the words are exchanged. Emily's face shows frustration and indifference, while Alice's reveals a mix of anger and hurt. The weight of betrayal hangs in the air. Both women are dressed in contrasting outfits, Alice in something modest yet elegant, while Emily wears something more modern and sharp. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. 1, 2. Prompt 2. Alice is in her kitchen, dressed in a modest, comfortable outfit. Her white skin glows softly in the morning light coming through the window. She's focused on making coffee, moving gracefully as she sets the table for breakfast. There's a sense of calm in her demeanor, yet her face shows the subtle weariness of years spent caring for others. Her expression is thoughtful as she stirs the coffee, reflecting on her past. The kitchen is cozy, warm, and inviting, filled with memories of family meals. Alice's movements are slow but deliberate, suggesting the routine of someone who has lived a life of service. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. 1. Prompt 3. Emily stands in her modern, sleek apartment, dressed in a sharp, professional outfit. She has white skin, and her face shows little emotion as she works, focused on her laptop. Her eyes are narrowed in concentration, her posture stiff and efficient. There's a coldness to her expression, a certain detachment that reflects the way she has built her life, a life of fast-paced success with little room for emotional connection. The apartment is immaculately decorated, reflecting Emily's sharp, business-like personality. There's an emptiness to the space, despite its beauty, mirroring Emily's internal world. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. 2. Prompt 4. Alice and Emily stand in a tense standoff, with an ominous figure looming in the background. The room is dimly lit, and the atmosphere is thick with tension. Alice and Emily face each other, their expressions a mix of suspicion and fear, as they stand united against the new threat. The figure in the background, a manipulative businessman, watches them, but the focus is on the two women. Alice's face is a portrait of quiet determination, while Emily's features show the stress of the situation, her usual cool demeanor cracked. Both women are prepared to confront the harsh reality of being manipulated, their emotions raw. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. 1-2. Prompt 5. Alice sits alone on a park bench, her white skin contrasted against the golden glow of autumn leaves falling around her. The park is quiet, peaceful, and filled with the colors of fall. Alice's face is calm, but there's a hint of sadness in her eyes, as though she's contemplating her past. The bench is secluded, and the soft rustling of the leaves adds to the serene, reflective mood. Her hands rest in her lap, and she's dressed comfortably, her attire simple yet appropriate for the setting. The scene captures a moment of introspection and solitude as Alice processes everything that has happened. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. 1. Prompt 6. The final scene shows Alice standing in the doorway of her empty home, dressed in a simple, casual outfit. The house behind her is dark, symbolizing the end of that chapter in her life. The light from outside floods in, casting a warm glow on her white skin. She stands tall, looking forward, her face a mixture of resolve and peace. She steps outside into the unknown, her posture confident as she walks down the street, leaving the past behind. The camera focuses on her walking away from the house, symbolizing her journey of self-discovery and newfound freedom. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. No cartoon. 1.